Welcome to PharmaSource, recorded at CDMO Live 2025. This episode is brought to you by Qualifies, the platform that helps life science teams streamline audits and predict site risks with AI-driven insights.
This is going to be a live podcast for PharmaSource, and it's all about network strategy. One of the big topics at the moment is how is pharma responding to the current geopolitical situation and building high-performance CDMO ecosystem. So, very pleased to be joined by Malak Akhtar, who is VP of Procurement for Bayer Consumer Health, Christina Kollerud, Senior Director of External Manufacturing for Leo Pharma, Bernard Boom, Head of External Manufacturing, VP for Animal Health at Boehringer Ingelheim, and Shivana Arora, Managing Director of Bluejet Healthcare with the CDMO perspective. Welcome to you all. To begin with then, I think I'd like to ask all of you to give a brief introduction to yourself, and if I could ask you to share the number one challenge that you think is facing network strategy in 2025. And start with you, please, Malak.
Thank you, Luke. So good morning, everybody. My name is Malak Akhtar, as Luke said. So I look after the consumer health procurement team focused on product supply within the Bayer organization. So within my scope is all of the many CMO relationships that we manage, but also raw materials, packaging components, as well as some of the CapEx and engineering scope as well. So I've been with Bayer now for close to 12 years, prior to Bayer with GSK. So the biggest challenge, I would say, for Bayer specifically, and I'm sure there's some similarities with my colleagues here, is portfolio complexity. So we have, within Bayer Consumer Health, over 5,000 SKUs. About half of those are internally supported, about half are externally supported. And the two big drivers are we have some of the portfolio is very old, so we don't really honestly know how we make it, but it works. And then at the same time, we have very enthusiastic and productive commercial colleagues that want to add to the portfolio regularly and often, and that brings a lot of complexity, which is difficult to manage within a network strategy.
Good morning. My name is Bernhard Böhm. I'm with Boehringer Ingelheim, and as Luke said, I'm taking care of our external manufacturing network for animal health. So Boehringer, as some of you might know, has two major business divisions. One is animal health, that's where I am. The other one is human pharma, and that includes as well biopharmaceutical production. And some of you might know that Boehringer is also active as a CDMO to be precise, in the field of biopharmaceutics. So, but again, I'm taking care of the animal health piece. That includes API sourcing. For animal health, we're outsourcing completely APIs, so 100%. And finished product, that is approximately 25 to 30% of outsourcing. I'm with the industry now for more than 25 years, almost 20 years with Boehringer. I had the pleasure to be in various functions throughout my career, from R&D through production, through life cycle management. So I would say I know pretty well the life cycle of products. I've been 20 years of this time, I've been with human pharma, and now since 5 years in animal health. And maybe we can talk about it later a little bit, because animal health is in some aspects very, very different from human health. And so maybe, and when you hear my answers today, please keep in mind that I will be talking with the view on animal health, which might be sometimes very different from what you know from human pharma.
How many SKUs, if you compare it to Malak's?
We have even more than that. So I would tend to choose the same topic as one of the key challenges, but I would come up with another one, which probably is very familiar to you. One of the key challenges is also to create and manage resilient, robust supply chains in the face of all the changes which are happening and have happened over the years. And when we look at this, let's say the selection criteria, for example, to select CDMOs, my impression is that the list gets rather bigger and more complex and more things to be considered than before. So that's a real challenge, and especially in animal health, where we have relatively compared to human pharma, lower volumes. So that is another thing which doesn't make it easier.
Thank you. Christina, please.
Hello, my name is Christina Kollerud. I'm heading up external manufacturing in Leo Pharma. I have about 30 years experience from AstraZeneca and Leo Pharma. Leo Pharma is what we call a mid-sized pharma company. We're a global leader in medical dermatology. We're serving about 100 million patients globally, 70 countries. We do have internal manufacturing, 6 sites around Europe. We're quite Europe-focused. Our majority of sales is in Europe, but US is important and Asia is important. I would say that for me, the number one question you asked about today is the global uncertainty in general. It's just getting more and more with the geopolitics going on in the world, the wars, and the turbulence. So I think right now it's, of course, all these discussions around tariffs around the world, but that is also impacting our logistics and supply performance, so it's causing a lot of turbulence. So right now it's also the uncertainty, where is it going to lead to, where it's going to land.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Shiven Arora, Managing Director of Blue Jet Healthcare. So Blue Jet Healthcare is an innovation-led CDMO in small molecules. We work with in specific areas such as contrast media, complex intermediates in working for innovators, different cross-therapeutic areas. We have 4 internal manufacturing sites. And coming to the topic of today, I think the uncertainty and around the network strategy is I think the over-dependence of a specific geography for your sourcing requirements. I think considering what is happening globally, the geopolitical tensions, I think according to an industry report, 62% of pharma companies worldwide are relooking at their manufacturing footprint from a sourcing standpoint. I think that's an incredible number. And I think in today's day and age, resilience is becoming as important as costs.
Great, thank you. Well, let's dig a bit deeper then into some of those geopolitical factors and specifically how it's affecting your strategy as you're thinking about the year ahead. Maybe, Christina, if you could, you started talking about the turbulence and how that's impacting you. Could you explain a bit more on that, please?
First of all, I think we're in a business where you don't quickly make changes and moves, as you know, because it's a regulated industry. It's quite complex with technology transfer. It's very costly. So I think, first of all, to make changes is very costly. Normally, you kind of want to stay and not do too much of movements. So I think in Leo Pharma, we're currently kind of observing. We have a task force looking at what's going to happen here, gaining all this information. So we're kind of assessing the situation. And I think also looking at where those tariffs will land with costing, etc. I think also for me, with my experience in the business, is that to choose the right partner, a CMO, is so important, because looking at cost, even wherever these tariffs land in cost, what you can do with the right partner in driving down cost, continuous improvements, and overall costing may override also some of that also. So I think that's still very, very important in the... And I think also for a company like Leo that is not as large as AstraZeneca, where I used to work before, we can't really afford to be dual sourced if we have small volumes, and the cost to maintain dual sourcing and split the volumes. So I think that kind of resilience to regionalize too much, and we don't have people on the ground in Asia, etc. So I think we need to a little bit work with what we have and try to see where we really need to make changes.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Same question to you, please, Bernard.
So I would say Boehringer Ingelheim is probably has the privilege to, as a truly family-owned company, to to act and think very long term. It has always been like this. And that means that also traditionally we have always tried to set up our supply chains in a way that they are really long term and as resilient as possible. Now we are sharing in animal health, we are sharing a similar situation like you. I mentioned that before. We have, compared to human pharma, relatively low volumes typically, with some exceptions. So that makes dual supply, like in your case, challenging. Now, if we look a bit closer, it's different for active ingredients and for finished products. I said that we are outsourcing 100% of our APIs, except for the vaccines. That is a different story. So that enables us and has enabled us to go for dual supply for at least the key active ingredients. And in situations like we face now, this is partially paying off. So we have many cases where we can choose which source we use for a finished product. We have Chinese API suppliers, of course, but we still have a major footprint for API supply in Europe. And that is paying off. We are paying a higher price for that. And part of that was a strategic decision, but we will also move more towards low-cost countries in the future, that's for sure. But we will always try to balance cost against other factors as well, because cost is important, but it's, as we see right now, not the only factor that is important. So that's why I said earlier, resilient supply chain. It's more challenging for finished product with dual supply. But if we look at the US tariff, for example, country of origin, you may know that in most cases, the API supply is the key criterion for determining country of origin and hence the tariffs. So that's why API plays a very significant role. But let's not only look at the US, it's also the other way around, looking at China. Import into China of US manufactured drugs is also a big challenge, and we're seeing that challenge from our either US-based own sites or our US-based CMOs delivering products into China.
Thank you. Malik, when I interviewed you last year, you were just kicking off the Project Martini initiative within Bayer to shake up and consolidate your CDMO network. I think it was around 200 or so contract manufacturing partners previously. How's that progressing? And how have the sort of geopolitical crises, how's that impacted that initiative?
So progressing really well. I guess it's also a case of be careful what you wish for. I mean, we put together, I think, close to 200 technical packages, which we sent out to nearly 100 CDMO partners, some of whom are here this week. So thank you if you've responded and input some information. So now we are advanced through the analysis of all of the information that we've got. We got some really good insights in terms of how we can improve on a number of different areas. I mean, the obvious ones around cost and cash, but also helping us on our desire for regionalization. But to your question around, how has the current challenges impacted our strategy? Not so much, to be honest with you, because we embarked a long time ago on a drive to go region for region. We were very much focused at Bayer on a European network, both our internal sites and our CDMO partners. So we saw a need to establish supply primarily in North America. I mean, we have business obviously in APAC and LATAM as well, but North America is somewhere that we've been actively pushing for. So this has really helped us, and hopefully, with looking at the team, within the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be able to start communicating the results of the Martini exercise.
Great, thank you. Shivan, I'm particularly interested in your perspective as a manufacturer in India. I mean, do you see the US-China tensions as an opportunity for the Indian manufacturing sector?
Well, I think there would be a combination of opportunities and challenges. And to Malik's point, I think most of these innovators have a lot of maturity in their sourcing strategies. So they've seen it a long way. We've seen multiple black swan events such as COVID-19, tariffs. I think despite that, the healthcare API manufacturing in Europe has been resilient in a very big way. We at Blue Jet, I think as a partner of choice for intermediates, KSMs, RSMs are supporting this vision of API manufacturing in Europe in a big way. And that's why most of our business is from these regulated markets. I think despite this, I think in the recent past, according to an industry report, the US sponsors have increased the intermediate outsourcing from India by about 40% in the past 24 months. I think this is not a temporary shift. It's in a very big way a network diversification in motion, I believe.
Great, thank you. So let's go away from the big global stuff to more about practical implementation and the balance between cost effectiveness and resilience. And maybe starting with you, Christina, could you share some sort of more practical methodologies that your team uses to identify, assess, and mitigate risks across the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think working external manufacturing, I really see the value of working almost like a site, but a virtual site, that you really cross-collaborate across the functions like technical, quality, supply chain and procurement, etc., that you really work as a team to share information and cross-collaborate to find opportunities and to review risks. So what we're doing is that we have a regular quarterly risk review our supply chains. And for me, it's very important. You really need to know your supply chains and your contracts into the detail, and knowing raw materials, our dual source, what's the weakest link. I've seen that in AstraZeneca with big brands where we have the weakest link, which is quite a small thing. So really knowing and being proactive, and also working, I talked again about this, finding the right CMO that really want to collaborate, and openness and transparency, so that we are in it together, can really risk mitigate and do the right thing and work on continuous improvement. So I think, and that's very much down to the humans, I think, and the collaboration and teamwork across both internally and externally.
Great, thank you. Bernard, if we could talk a bit about portfolio optimization, please, because obviously that's particularly important in animal health, driven by the number of species and product variants. How do you manage that? How do you rationalize the portfolio? How do you rationalize your network? What do you do?
So we have basically a process in place, a portfolio optimization process, which is running annually, where we look systematically and throughout our whole portfolio. And we're doing it now in two directions, or coming from two directions. One is from a product perspective, so looking into the SKUs per product. The other one is now starting looking at it from a CDMO or CMO perspective. Because there are two things. One is the complexity of the portfolio per site or per supplier, which comes with downsides from a supply perspective. The other one is the number of CMOs we are managing. So similar to what you have done. We're coming, by the way, from more than 250 CMOs after the integration of Merial, of the Merial business in 2017. We're now at, if we look at I'm talking about finished product only here, we're now at about 70 CMOs, so we have done a similar exercise like you. And we still see too many. If you ask me, there's still too many. Yeah, there's a tail end, if I may say so, of CMOs where we have very little spend, and sometimes only one or two SKUs. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying we're also looking at it from a CMO perspective, so that we can try to let's say avoid that with the SKU reduction point of view from the product, we're kind of diluting more and more the footprint at individual CMOs, and then find more and more of them having only one or two SKUs with very small volumes. So we're trying also to make sure that we're not increasing that tail end of suppliers, so to say, and that's why we added this perspective as well. So again, this is an annual process, and we're facing the same challenges like you. There's more, probably, at least that's how we feel. There's probably more ideas to add than willingness to give up, but that's part of our job, and we will continue to go this pathway. Yeah.
Thank you. Malik, what practical advice could you share for how Bayer are managing rising cost pressures without compromising network reliability?
So, I think a couple of things. One is, to your point, Christine, you talked about dual sourcing. So for our most important products, our critical formulations and SKUs, we are looking to actively have a dual sourcing strategy. So that could be, ideally that's for the core technologies, one of our own sites, in combination with a CMO, which may be regionally focused. That gives us, of course, risk mitigation, resilience, and also the opportunity to have competitive pricing if you have the volumes to be able to manage that. So that's one thing on the resilience piece. In terms of how we're trying to manage some of the cost pressures is really offering to help a number of our CMOs in terms of how they manage their business. Not to be arrogant with what the work we do at Bayer, but there's obviously a lot of work we do in operational excellence within our own facilities. We can share those resources and capabilities with our CDMO partners, and also in terms of just sourcing materials and components. We have larger scale in the majority of cases, so we can share the benefit of some of those agreements with our CDMO partners, and that helps a lot because typically 50% is raw material costs going into the final product cost.
Thank you. On that point about collaboration, and Christine, you just mentioned the virtual team structure as well. Shivan, how does that look from your side? As a CDMO, how do you engage with cross-functional teams like that, and how do you get involved with the strategic planning process?
As a CDMO, I think it's always very important to learn the need for the customers, right? I think we learn a lot from the innovators. And in some cases, cross-functional teams play a very, very big role. It's not just about executing an order. It's about being a part of the sales and operation meetings, evaluating strategies with the innovators. And in some cases, we also request the innovator to speak to the larger audience at our side, explaining about the importance of the project, the patient outcome overall. So all these factors, help us navigate through these turbulent times.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we started the day yesterday with our survey with Simon Kucher, and that found, and talking to people throughout the day, and in the boat party last night, it was raised to me a couple of times that there were two things that sort of jumped out, I think, to people. One of those was the seeming disconnect about quality, the importance that pharma and biotechs put on quality versus where the CDMOs were tending to rank it. So it felt like there's a disconnect there, which was one of the things coming through the survey. And the other thing was the importance and investment in AI, which everyone said is important, everyone's investing, but what does that actually mean when it comes to manufacturing? So I'd be really fascinated to know if you could shed a light on either one of those topics, but certainly on the AI point, and if you feel like talking about the quality disconnect, you can do so. Who would like to go first? Christina, perhaps you.
Oh. Okay. Yes. I think in Leo, we are really excited about it. We put in a lot of effort and resource. What everyone can see is, I think, the first stepstone is this, using it for information gathering, documents. I can see huge benefits in learning and teaching, for example, simplifying license contracts, what's the content, pulling out the key information, so that part. But then for our internal production sites, it's about continuous improvements, gathering data in a good way, improving yields or lead times, or really targeting continuous improvements. With our external network, I think what we're looking at is going for system integration, sharing information, and more to come on that part. But I think it's early days, but I think there is great excitement about it.
How digital would you say your manufacturing network is now, if you were to sort of give it a percentage of how paper-based versus digitized?
I wouldn't want to go down that road. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for volunteering me. So similar, I would say we're at the very beginning. Now, first, what is important for me is there's huge potential, I have no doubt. The key question for me is what makes sense, and in which areas does it really add value? I mean, there's so many things you can do, But the question is, what should you do? And that's a bit more tricky to answer. We had one roundtable yesterday where we talked about digitalization in general and data exchange between CDMOs and customers. I think this is linked. Yeah, for us, for example, we first have to increase the number of CMOs who are willing and capable to exchange digital data at all with us. Before we, and I wouldn't say before, but that needs to go hand in hand with any thoughts and ideas about application of AI. I mean, that is not an isolated thing. But of course, as we look into connecting our CDMOs, at least the most important ones, more and more, our systems, then of course I would always try to look at useful applications of AI. And so that is more like the transactional point of view. Then there might be, let's call it, external and or internal point of view. So it's the CDMOs, whether they are using AI in the way how they are doing things, like topics you mentioned, Christina. And the third one is internally, there are certainly ideas. One is, you talked about knowing your contracts. Yeah, that is one application which I would consider very interesting. We have, coming with the huge number of CMOs, a lot of history. Yeah, some contracts 20, 25 years old. Sometimes I must say, we don't even know the details of those contracts. So AI could certainly help us here to better manage the contracts we have, and to enable us to do something like, let's call it, I would call it metadata insights, knowing a bit more without having to dig out hundreds of contracts and reading them, to have a first look and analysis into risks, into conditions. I don't think at this point that this will completely, let's say, make unnecessary that we're actually reading then the contracts, but it might help us to identify risks faster than we are able to do today. So that is one very practical thing which I can consider for AI application in our field. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Malik as well, please.
So we're doing that, so it does work. I mean, from a procurement point of view, there's probably easier and more case studies. So we're working with a company called Syrian Labs on exactly that, contract lifecycle management, to help us analyze the data and to categorize the contract, which is a bit of a mess at the moment. We're working on something with a company called Oro Labs, which is about your procurement front door. So this is helping your requisitioners find the right thing within your catalogs, or where you don't have catalogs. More on the indirect side than the direct side. And then also the last AI application is linked to resilience. So this is about sub-tier transparency. So how can you find out tier 2, 3, 4 transparency in your supply chains, and leveraging AI to do that. One of the other points that you raise, not AI specifically, but tech related in terms of collaboration. So we've actually in the process of rolling out an instance of Salesforce to help support collaboration with our most important supplier partners, CDMOs included. And this is across all of the different functions. So this is not procurement and supplier partner only. This has people from the manufacturing, quality, technical organizations involved as well. So still early days, but this is something we hope will really help us with collaboration.
Is that being positively received by partners?
Yep.
Great.
I can see a huge benefit also. Come to think about it, forecasts are really important, and there's a lot of manual hands-on what is the true forecast. To have AI generate the forecast for manufacturing to make would be nice.
Yeah, yeah. And Shivan, how are you thinking about it? As Bernard was saying, there's so much you could do, but what do you need to do, and where are you investing when it comes to digital technology?
I think it's the earlier we adopt, the better it is for all of us. I think many companies are reluctant to make use of these technologies, but as a company in BlueJet, we are using it for predictive maintenance, for example. Demand forecasting. These are the two areas which is becoming fairly important by the day. And also, another important aspect is deviation analytics. And being able to communicate that transparently with the innovator is very important. I think that helps us in a very big way.
Great. Thank you. So, being conscious of time, we're about to have two of our partners, the PSEI and Manufacturing 2030, are about to leap on stage and talk about what the state is of the true state of sustainability in pharma. But before we do, it'd be great to just get each of your takes on sustainability. All of your companies, I think, have net zero targets, certainly, or science-based targets. How is that playing a role right now, given how many other pressures are on you? Where does sustainability rank in your decision-making at the moment? And if we go through that way, starting with Malik, please.
I think it's fair to say it's not the highest priority at the moment, but it's still very much a consideration. I mean, the commitment that we made still stands. I think those of you that know my boss, Thomas Huderson, will know that sustainability is still a very important focus topic for Bayer and also by definition our suppliers. So two things, I think, as it relates specifically to network strategy and sourcing decisions, if you can combine it with another criteria, so regionalization is a great example. If we're moving region for region, that logically is going to mean less carbon miles getting the product from A to B and ultimately in the hands of the customer, then it serves both purposes. And so there we can continue to push the sustainability agenda. Specifically in terms of decarbonization, for the consumer health division, we have a relatively easy job on scope 1 and scope 2. Don't really do any chemistry. Where all of the issues lie is within our scope 3. So here we are doubling down on those big relationships which are putting a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, helping them to switch to green electricity, helping them to implement some of the measures that we've done ourselves for our own facilities. So that hasn't changed.
Great, thank you. Bernard, please.
It's gaining importance, I would say. So Boehringer Ingelheim takes the topic very seriously, and we also have internal sites who are net zero already today. It is an increasingly important criterion in supplier selection, and I would also tell you why, and that's my personal point of view, because first of all, it's not luxury. Yeah, it is something which should be important to all of us. Of course, there's a link to cost that needs investments. We all know that. But as I said earlier, it's not all about cost. And as I also said earlier, we're trying to think very long term. So if you take it to the essence, I would say, yes, it requires investments now, but it will pay off later. Because as we see already, our energy costs have already risen significantly over the last decade. And that's not the end of the story, probably. Yeah? So it serves society, it serves our planet, but it also will pay off. And it is paying off already in many cases. So I'm always trying to have this long-term view on it. Yeah? So you may have to pay a higher price a little bit, yeah? But ultimately, it will pay off. I firmly believe in that, and that's why it's starting to be of more and more importance. And after quality, probably, and cost and reliability, this becomes probably. So I would see it under the top 5 certainly now. It also sends a signal about the mindset of the companies, if you ask me. Yeah, because the companies who are really seriously engaging themselves in sustainability demonstrate that they care. And if they care about sustainability, they usually also are the ones who care about quality and who care about customer relationships. So for me, that is all linked, kind of, and that's why it's gaining importance.
Thank you. And the last word, please, to Christina.
Thank you. I fully agree with you, Bernard. I think it is, if you want to be part of playing the game long term, and as our supply selections are long term, and we also see health authorities gaining more and more interest, our customers, in how we manufacture our products and the sustainability. But I also see it's really connected to cost also, because normally also for Scope 3 and API, it's a lot about solvents, chemicals. So to do the recycling, use less, I think in the end it's going to be cost beneficial. And I think these triggers that we have to do something really makes us look at it. I remember in AstraZeneca we had a process using trichloroethylene, and it wasn't allowed in Sweden, so we had to look at alternatives. It was a 25-year-old process. And then we changed it to water and MIBK, and we could take out the recrystallization step for a big product. And we gained savings, higher quality, and in the end it was just a big win. But it's do we want to do the regulatory effort? Do we want to do that? But I think in many cases it triggers us to actually look at it and find out it's actually quite smart. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. A round of applause, please, for our panel. Thank you very much.
For more external manufacturing insights, head to cdmolive.com and download our 50-page summary of the event. Make sure to book your ticket for CDMO Live 2026, taking place the 27th to 28th of May at the World Trade Center Rotterdam. We look forward to seeing you there.